This is a short in-service about feeding and voice difficulties people with trisomy 21 may have. Trisomy 21 is more commonly known as Down syndrome.
Down syndrome the same as trisomy 21?
Is yes or no? No?
Is Down syndrome a rare disorder?
A rare disorder.
Think
That's
that's
kind
a
of
truth or a myth?
objective. I'm gonna go with myth.
Tell me if this is a truth or a myth. Down syndrome is typically hereditary and runs in families. I think that's a So people with Down syndrome have a short lifespan.
Yes. Shorter lifespan or short?
Shorter than us. Okay. Down syndrome can be cured. Truth or myth?
Myth.
Okay, so you can tell me if you think this is a truth or a myth. Okay. Most children with Down syndrome are segregated into their own special classroom and not with typical students. Okay. Do all people with Down syndrome have severe cognitive delays? Okay. Thank Children with Down syndrome born to more parents above the age of 35 or under 35? I believe it's above the age of 35. Above the age of 35? Thanks. Down syndrome are able to nurse and bottle feed like typical babies do. No. Okay.
Now that we have a foundation, let's look into some reasons why speech-language pathologists treat children with Down syndrome. Children with Down syndrome have a wide range of skill development, ranging from within typical parameters to significantly delayed. Let's highlight a few milestones related specifically to feeding. Typical children sit alone between 5 and 9 months old, while a child with Down syndrome will exhibit this skill anywhere from 6 to 30 months. Typical children are able to produce responsive smiles anywhere between 1 month and 3 months, while children with Down syndrome do this between 1.5 and 5 months. Children with Down syndrome drink from a cup between 12 and 32 months old, while the typical range is 9 to 17 months. And children with Down syndrome can feed themselves finger food between 10 and 24 months, while typical development is 7 to 14 months. This is Noah and his family. Noah was born in December 2010 and was diagnosed with Down syndrome. They live in Texas and his mother is a pediatrician. His family created a blog about his development and the journey they have gone on from initial diagnosis to now. This is a great resource for families and professionals who work with clients with Down syndrome.
Here is Noah at 10 months old during mealtime. We see that he is positioned in a way that is physically supportive and conducive for feeding. Noah's body language is welcoming and alert, which provides a positive foundation for the feeding experience. Therefore, we can look specifically at the feeding characteristics of children with Down syndrome. Noah holds the food in his mouth with relatively little tongue movement and does not use his tongue to move his meal towards the back of his mouth in order to swallow. This oral motor skill typically develops around 4 to 5 months of age. We also see evidence of low muscle tone, which is typical of those with Down syndrome. His mandible hangs low and his large tongue often protrudes.
So why do children with Down syndrome have this range of milestone acquisition? There are several reasons. They have low muscle tone, which affects gross and fine motor skills, and as we saw earlier, feeding skills. Anatomical differences, such as a small, narrow upper jaw and high palatal arch, also affect feeding.
When providing feeding therapy for these children, the first step is to stimulate the facial muscles using tools such as a Chewy tube or a Z-Vibe. Next, let's watch a child who is receiving oral motor stimulation prior to feeding. Due to their low tone, proper seating is important for feeding. Depending on the child's age and abilities, car seats and booster seats offer the support and appropriate positioning necessary. If needed, weighted vests and/or blankets can also be used to provide additional sensory input and to help organize the sensory system to help prepare for feeding. Once the facial muscles are awake and the child is positioned correctly, the sequential oral sensory approach developed by Kay Toomey can be implemented. The first step is to help the child tolerate a new texture by first being in the same room as the food. Second, sit at the table with food on the other side. And third, look at food when directly in front of them. The second step is to help the child interact with the food through using utensils, cup, or plates, and have the child assist in preparation of food. The third step is for the child to smell food in the room, have the odor put directly in front of them, and lastly, lean down or pick up the food to smell it. The fourth step is to have the child touch the food with his hands, lips, teeth, and tongue, eventually licking the food. The fifth step is to taste the food. It begins with biting a small piece, holding it in his mouth, and then spitting. Then the child bites, chews, and then spits. The child will then chew, swallow, and drink. Eventually, the child can chew and swallow independently, which hopefully leads to eating.
Now we're transitioning from feeding to voice characteristics of those with Down syndrome.
Now let's listen to the voice characteristics of a man with Down syndrome.
My name is Christopher Scott, and I'm from Texas. I'm 31 years old, and I have Down syndrome. Well, I like my job. I'm a teacher assistant, and I work with kids. That's where I get some of my energy from. I like lots of movies. I like to go dancing, get my groove on. See, we are more alike than different.
Based on this video, how would you characterize his voice? Christopher's vocal quality is monotonous and low-pitched, breathy and rough. Due to structural anomalies, persons with Down syndrome typically present with an unstable and weak vocal quality characterized by breathiness, roughness, and nasality. These vocal characteristics are also seen in infants during crying and vocalizations. The decrease in fundamental frequency exhibited by those with Down syndrome is likely due to their general low muscle tone. Additionally, the perception of hoarse, breathy, and harsh vocal qualities is significantly related to the high jitter and shimmer perturbation values of those with Down syndrome. The abnormal vocal characteristics of those with Down syndrome are the result of structural, not functional deficits. Therefore, speech-language pathologists typically do not treat voice. More often, speech services will be provided for dysarthria and articulation.
Due to the high incidence of Down syndrome, it's likely you will have at least one, if not several, children on your caseload. We've provided you with a brief introduction to feeding difficulties and voice quality for those with Down syndrome. There is a wealth of research and resources available to you. Here we've listed national and local resources.
In addition to these resources, Phoenix Children's Hospital has recently announced the opening of the first Down syndrome clinic in Arizona. This is a multidisciplinary clinic that will meet 3 times a month and will be staffed by a developmental pediatrician, geneticist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech therapist, and a care coordinator dedicated to assisting families with appointment scheduling between clinic providers and other specialists.